We're going to start by opening up the 12 start file. So go ahead and do that if you haven't already. And brushes and symbols are going to be very quick ways to create notations of embellishments on garments, holes, pockets, all those types of things. And then that's going to lead us into pattern on Wednesday. So how do you add a pattern that looks properly scaled to a garment? So there's 3 different brush types when we start looking at brushes. There's a pattern brush that's going to repeat what you're doing in a line. There's an art brush that takes what you've created as an image and it stretches it along the entire path. And then there's a scatter brush, and this would be good, say, for sequins or rhinestones, where it just creates a kind of a systematic sprinkling of what you've created. What we're going to be working with primarily in the realm of merchandising and marketing is pattern brushes and art brushes. And for the most part, pattern brushes. We are going to work a little bit more with art brushes on Wednesday and Friday when we look at how to create a layout for your line sheet. So that's when you can add some embellishments with art brushes. So for section 1, we're going to create a double needle top stitch. And I want to explain just so that you understand. So you know that you can duplicate a line by the way that we created the stitching around the neckline. But we want these lines to match up. So if you look at the image on page 1, notice how if you, right under the middle section of the button, those lines were duplicated and they don't line up. But when we create the double stitch as a brush, then it lines up around the pocket. So that's the difference there to make sure that it's very accurate and clean looking. So once you get into your 12 start document, I want you to navigate to the t-shirt on Artboard 1. And if it helps you, go ahead and choose View, Fit Artboard in Window. And then if you want to zoom further from there, you can use your zoom tool and draw a marquee around it. So this is going to be our template that we're working with to play with stitches. So in order to create more work on top of this, we need to first add a new layer. So we're going to go up to Window, and then Layers. You might already have it open on the side, on the right side of your screen, but if you don't, go to Window, Layers. Mine seems to be open somewhere, though I don't see it. Oh, there it is on my other screen. Okay. So you might already have this. If you don't, you're going to add a layer called brushes. You may already have it in the document, but just in case your computer is working a little bit differently, go ahead and add a new layer titled brushes. So does everybody see that? You have the layer already? Okay. Then we're going to go and use a tool that we haven't used all that much yet. We've been working more with the pen tool, but now we're going to switch over to the line segment tool. So the line segment tool is right below the lowercase t. After you've selected the line segment tool, just click once in the white area of the artboard. So I click once and this line segment tool option window comes up. So the reason that we're using this and not the pen tool, just to be clear, is because you know that you want the stitch to be an exact length. And so if you use the pen tool, you're going to be guessing the length and it won't be an exact measurement. So make a note that the line segment will give you an accurate length, especially when it comes to stitching. And then in this line segment tool options window, we're going to make the following changes. The length is going to be 2 points. The angle will be 0 degrees. And you may already have the length translated in inches because that's what the document is set up as. And so all you need to do then is just type in 2 period PT. And as soon as you go to change the angle, it converts it to inches for you. So it's not a problem if it's set to inches. And then as soon as you have those 2 things done, click OK. So you'll notice up in the top corner or wherever you happen to create your line segment, you have this itty bitty little line. And it probably just looks like a couple of anchor points. It's so small. So let's choose the zoom tool and zoom in on it because we want to look at it more closely. And this might be a little too much just in order to get a good sense. And so you can decide how comfortable you are in terms of zooming in. I'm going to choose about this size. Now we want to open the stroke panel. So again, it might be open on your right side. If it's not, go to Window and then down to Stroke. We're going to change the weight to 0.25, the cap to rounded, so that's the one in the middle. We're going to change the corner to rounded, again, the one in the middle. And then I want you to make sure that the dashed line box is not checked. So make sure that this is turned off. So your line segment should now look like mine on the screen after making those changes. Then we're going to go up to, with our line segment still selected, Edit, Copy, and then Edit, Paste in Front. So this is a command that we used with that back neckline area. This is going to be really useful as you move forward as well. As soon as you have this line segment and you've pasted in front, you'll notice that you don't see your second line segment yet. That's because we need to use our arrow keys to nudge it down. So I'm going to nudge it down 1 click to begin with. So there's 1. You may decide that you like the appearance of 2 clicks. So if I go down 2, now keep in mind this is very zoomed in. So if I zoom out, that would be the distance of our double top stitch. But to zoom back in, just so that we're looking at it clearly, you'll need to decide how far apart you want a double needle top stitch to be. In general, 1 click apart is pretty industry standard, but again, it depends on the style and the garment you're making.
Are your little line segments in centimeters instead of inches? Or like, why is this? It should be point. Point, okay, yeah, PT. I'll see what inches.
Oh yeah, so so just as a review, when you click on the line segment tool and then you click in the box, Remember that we have our document already set to inches. And so in order to change that, all you need to do is type in two space PT for point, because that's going to be our frame of measurement. And then as soon as you hit enter, it's going to convert that to inches, and then you don't have to shift back and forth between the two. So it'll do that for you. Does everybody get that? The conversion piece? Okay. Because it's kind of a pain in the butt to go back and forth between the measurements. So that's one way around it. Okay. So then I want you to choose your selection tool. And then draw a rectangle marquee around these two line segments. So they should both be selected. And now you're going to go to your brushes panel. So again, it could be open on the right side here depending on what you've been working with. But if it's not, go up to Window and then Brushes. When you open the Brushes panel, you're going to click on the New Brush icon. And that's going to be this little piece of paper with the folded up corner on that bottom edge. When I click New Brush, it's going to bring up this menu and ask me what type of brush I want to create. We are generally working with pattern brushes, especially today. And so pattern brush is going to be our default. So select pattern brush. And as a side note, most apparel stitches will be created as a pattern brush. And so just remember that, put a star by that if it helps you remember for when you're doing your assignment. So I clicked OK on the type of brush I want. And now I have another menu that I need to get through. So if you go over to page 3 of the exercise, we're going to make the following selections in this menu. We're going to name our pattern brush Double Needle Top Stitch. And then we're going to set the spacing to 50%. And why are we doing that? So the reason for this is that if you just click OK, it's going to put them too close together. And when you print it out, it's going to look like a solid line. So if we have a 50% space, that ensures that this delicate little line will look like a dotted line on a printed copy. So keep that in mind when you're going to print things, that spacing is key for stitching. And then as soon as you're done with that, click OK. So now notice what has happened. If I enlarge this real quick. Now we have our double needle top stitch, and if I hover over it, it's named that as well. Okay, so now we're going to apply it. So move your brushes out of the way for the moment, and then zoom out so that you can see the t-shirt. So choose your zoom tool, hold down Alt, and zoom out. And you can just leave that shape there for now. And now you can see exactly how tiny it is when you zoom out onto the shirt. So choose your pen tool, and then I want you to draw just a little bit above the existing hem stitch, a path. So somewhere like about here. And make sure that you close your anchor point so that it's a complete path. And then to make sure that it's curving, you can do this or not, but if you get kind of bothered by things being uneven, you can use your reshape tool, which is underneath the scale or the shear tool. And remember, you can hover on the line and pull it down so that it's curved like the one below it. So just as a side note, this is one thing that you can do if it cooperates. There we go. Okay. If you want to leave it straight, that's totally fine. But if you want it curved, go ahead. Now you're going to go back over to your brushes panel, and you're going to click on the brush that you just created with the line still selected that you just drew. So click on that, and as soon as you do, a double needle top stitch will appear along that path. So I'm going to zoom in so that we can see this a little more clearly. Oops, my path did not get closed. Okay, there we go. Oh. No. Okay, how are we doing? Does everybody see their double needle top stitch? Okay. Good. So we're going to go on and we're going to try a different one, and we're going to make a new brush, the zigzag brush. So for this one, make sure that you're still on the t-shirt for artboard 1. And then I want you to go back over to that shape that you used to create the double needle top stitch and zoom in on it. Because we're going to create our zigzag from this shape. Then go to the selection tool. So draw a selection around both line segments so that it's all the way selected. Then you're going to go over to the rotate tool. So it's the one that has the arrow going in a circle. And double click on this icon in the toolbar. You're going to see this rotate window come up. We want to rotate it 90 degrees. So go ahead and type in 90. And then click OK. When you're done, it should look like this. Now we're going to turn it into the zigzag shape. So choose the direct selection tool, so your white arrow. And then we're going to go back to what we started doing when we did our fence post exercise. Now we're coming back to why we did that. Remember how we took 2 fence posts and we drew around just the tops? We're going to do the same thing here. So I want you to draw a rectangle marquee around only the top 2 anchor points, like this. And when you let go, notice that the top 2 anchor points are filled in with red. The bottom 2 are hollow. So that means that our top 2 are selected. Then flip over to page 4. So right click in the white space of the artboard wherever you want. I generally just go up and to the right. And then you're going to choose this button or this word titled average. So again, you get here by right-clicking in the white space of the artboard. As soon as the average window comes up, you will see these menu options. We're going to choose both. And then click OK. And as soon as you click OK, you should see this shape. So what we did is we averaged the area between the two lines to bring them together based on the degrees that they were separated by. Now I want you to choose the selection tool. Draw a rectangle marquee to select the newly shaped line segments that you have that look like an incomplete letter A. And for this one, make sure that you select the whole thing, because remember, previously you only selected the top two. This time you want to have the whole thing selected. The next thing we're going to do is same as we did with the last brush. We're going to go to the brushes panel. And then we're going to click on the new brush icon, the little piece of paper with the corner turned up. It's going to ask us what type of brush we want to make, and we're going to say pattern brush. And then click OK.
You're going to have to shut it down and start cooking.
Now this time you don't need any spacing, so the only thing you're doing is naming it. Name it zigzag, and then click OK. Now look at your brushes panel and notice that you have a new zigzag brush available to use as a zigzag stitch. We're now going to go back to our t-shirt and do the same thing that we did with the bottom hem, but this time we're going to do it on the left sleeve of the t-shirt. So go ahead and zoom out to the full t-shirt so you can see what you're doing. And choose the pen tool. And then draw a stitching pattern or a line segment above the existing stitches. And make sure that your path closes on the line of the shirt. Go back and choose the selection tool. Make sure that your new line segment is selected. And then go to your brushes panel and apply the new zigzag brush by clicking on the image of it in the panel. And now you should have a zigzag stitch on your sleeve. So if you zoom in to see what this looks like, there you go. The next thing we're going to do is make extended or tight zigzags by reshaping the line segments that we used to make the first zigzag. So we're going to go back up to this shape. Again, notice how small this is in comparison to the garment. Are we good? Do we need to pause?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Is there anything you need to see again? How many of you have the book that we had listed as optional for class? Several of you do. Okay. So a lot of these things are included in the book, but I've gone through and made the directions a lot more detailed so you can follow them. So is that still helpful? Okay.
Just read it again.
Are we good?
I think so.
Okay. So just flag me down if you need to stop or pause again. Okay, so going back to step 10 on page 4, we want to use the selection tool and we want to draw a marquee around it. And then what we're going to do is hover your mouse over this little node on the side, and it could be either side. So whichever way your mind works, I just go from, I usually think on the right, so we're gonna just drag it out so that it looks more like a teepee. So drag it out as wide as you would like to, within reason, and then we are going to create a new wider zigzag brush with this new shape. So we're going to go to our brushes panel. We're going to choose the new brush icon, pattern brush, and we're going to rename this brush Zigzag Wide. And if you feel like you like the appearance of the zigzags, you might want to come up with some type of numbering system for them, like zigzag wide 1 if you plan to make others. That's just something to keep in mind. But for now, this will be good. And then click OK. Size pattern.
You have to have it selected.
Oh, the shape? There we go. Thank you. There we go. Okay, so now you can see in your brush panel that you have a new wider zigzag that you can use for stitches. The other way that you can work with this is to draw a new path. So let's go ahead and go into step 11, and then we'll talk about how you change the stroke. So zoom out so you can see the t-shirt. And I want you to draw a path along the right sleeve now of the t-shirt using the pen tool. With that path selected, go over to your brushes panel and then apply the zigzag wide brush to this new path. So when you click on it, and as long as the path is selected, it should change automatically. So now notice how your zigzag is wider on the right sleeve than it is on the left over here. Okay, so we're going to play around with one other way that you can change the size of brushes to do different artistic techniques. Go and open the stroke panel on the right side of your screen, or window stroke. And then flip over to page 5 to continue on with instructions. So select the path that this most recent wide zigzag was applied to. Okay. So when you have it selected, go to the stroke panel and change the weight of the stroke to 0.5. As soon as I do this, notice how much more fine and detailed the zigzag looks. So even though it's wider, changing the stroke and different elements within the stroke panel for a brush can significantly change the way that it looks. So you can play around with that however you want to. So I would suggest playing with that when you do your assignment. Okay, so those are our first 2 brushes. So the other thing I want to point out as this last note before section 3 is that if you make your strokes large, which is about 4 points and above, this is an indication that in an apparel flat, you are using embroidery thread. That's really big in terms of a size for stitching. The most correct and proportional size is 1 point for apparel flats for just general use. So unless you plan to do really heavy embroidery work, steer clear of those higher stroke weights. Okay, moving on. So let's now navigate to Artboard 2. We're going to start looking at this jacket. For section 3, creating an overlock stitch brush. Now go back up to your layers panel and make sure that you have a separate layer titled brushes and that you are on that layer. So it's probably there for you already, but just in case your computer's doing something different, make sure to add it. We're going to start in a very similar way. So we're going to choose the line segment tool. And then click on the white area of the artboard once, or depending on your computer, twice, to bring up the Tool Options menu. We want the length to be 2 points, so 2 space PT. And then remember, when you go to the angle area, it will convert that length to inches for you. We want 0 degrees, and then click OK. Just as last time, we have this really tiny line segment, so we need to zoom in on it by drawing a marquee around it. So you should be zoomed in about like this. Now for step 3, with your line segment selected, and you'll know that it's selected because it's got the red line and the 2 solid anchor points at the end, I want you to go over to your stroke panel. We'll just move this over here so you can see better. So we're going to make the following changes. The weight should be 0.25. The cap should be rounded. The corner should be rounded. And then make sure that the dashed line is turned off or unchecked. And we actually already did the zoom tool step before we did the stroke panel. And so if you want to zoom in more now, feel free. But if not, we already zoomed. Now we're going to go to step 5 and choose the selection tool. So draw a rectangle marquee around your line segment to select it. And then choose Edit Copy, Edit Paste in Front. As soon as we've done this, remember, it's still laying on top of our original line segment, so we need to move it down. So move it down 1 to 2 clicks with your down arrow key on the keyboard. And the 1 to 2 is really your preference, so whatever you would like. So I'll just go with 1. So now we need to add the loop for the overlock stitch. So this part can get a little bit tricky. So we're going to begin with the pen tool, so go ahead and select that. And then I want you to click once down towards the bottom of the line segment, not on the anchor point at the end, not here. Go in just a little bit to the side of the anchor point on the path.
Okay.
So does everybody have that point chosen?
I think so.
Okay. I want to make sure I walk through this slowly so everyone can follow if they need to. Okay, so then click once in this point that you've identified. And now you are going to move up to the top right corner, like so. Again, not on the anchor point, but just inside of it. Then you can click on that point. But do not let go of your mouse when you click that point. You're going to start dragging over to the side to create a curve that looks roughly like this. Do we need to see that again?
No.
No? Okay. So then you can let go. Then you're going to click right back where you started at this anchor point on the bottom left corner that you first created. And so when you're done, you should have something that looks like the very last figure on page 6 in that sequence of building this shape at the top of the page, and or the shape on my screen. So now we need to make this a brush so that it becomes an overlock stitch. So go to your brushes panel again. And then you're going to click on New Brush. And before you do that, good rule of thumb, make sure that it's selected, otherwise it won't take. Then you can choose your new brush. Choose Pattern Brush, and then OK. And we're going to name this an overlock. So you can write overlock stitch or just overlock, whatever you would like. And then click OK. No spacing is needed here. Now you have an overlock stitch in your brush panel. So we're going to now go and apply an overlock stitch to our jacket. So zoom out so that you can see your jacket. I'm going to move these things out of the way. And when you zoom in, this will look pixelated, but for our purposes today, don't worry about it. And choose the pen tool. And then I want you to create a path starting somewhere towards the upper corner here. And then you want to make sure that you curve it to finish it. Whoops. So you're going to draw a path on each of these triangles at the bottom of the jacket. And I'm going to reshape mine by using the reshape tool, just because this is a bit of a interesting shape, so it needs a little more help. So you can either use your key commands to curve the shape, or you can use the reshape tool. So everybody remember how to use the reshape tool? Mostly. Then if you want to, instead of redrawing this line, you can reflect it. So if I go to my reflect tool, I can choose vertical and then copy. That did something weird. Oh, I added one too many anchor points there. For the sake of time, I'm going to redraw here. Okay, so as soon as you have your curved line segments drawn, I want you to apply the overlock stitch to both line segments on the underside of the coat. So I'm going to bring up my brushes panel, and then with one line segment selected, I'm going to click on my overlock stitch. Then I'm going to go and select my other path, and I'm going to click on my overlock stitch. So overlock stitches you'll often see, especially in apparel flats, in ways where fabric needs to be very durable, if it's in an area or if it's on a finishing area that's going to be largely exposed. So in a coat, you'll want these if it's heavy fabric or if it's an area that will get a lot of wear, like sitting on it. So it helps to keep it in place and to keep it more durable. Let's move on to section 4, creating a zipper brush. As you can see in the image in the exercise, a zipper brush can have many different appearances. All you need to do is draw a vertical linear path with the pen tool, and then find your zipper brush, click on it, and then you have a complete zipper with stops, seams, and stitching all built together. Let's begin with section 4A, creating an open zipper. I want you to navigate to the jacket on Artboard 3 as you see on the screen. This jacket flat is in need of a zipper. The zipper size you need for this jacket is very small. We're going to go to the Layers panel on the right side of the screen here. If it's not open, go to Window, and then Layers. And we're going to make sure that we have a new layer that's called Brushes, and that we're working on it. And because we are already, we can go ahead and collapse the Layers panel. Next, we're going to choose the Rectangle tool. So go over to your vertical toolbar on the left side. To begin making a rectangle, click once on the white area of the artboard. A rectangle options window will appear. Type in a width of 0.75 space PT per point. And for height, type in 3 space PT for point. Now notice that our document is set to an inches setting already. So when we click into different screens, it does the conversion to inches for us already. Make sure that you do your measurements in points when you enter them. Click OK. A tiny rectangle is going to appear. Now we need to choose our zoom tool and zoom in so that we can properly see what we're doing. Choose the selection tool and draw a marquee around the new rectangle just to make sure that it's selected. Or you can simply click on the path to ensure that it's selected as well. We're going to change the stroke in the stroke panel to 0.25 point. We're going to change the caps to rounded in the center here and the corners to rounded. And then this is all you need to make an open basic zipper. Now we need to actually add it as a brush. So we're going to go over to our brushes panel. Again, check for it over on the right side of the screen. If it's not open, go to Window, Brushes to open it. So I'm going to select my rectangle, and then I'm going to click the new brush symbol. We want it to be a pattern brush, so click OK. We're going to name this Open Zipper. And I actually already have a zipper that looks like this, so I'm just going to add an extra number, which you don't have to. And we're going to change the spacing to 100% because it needs to lock into place with the other part of the zipper when we're done making it. And then click OK. Now you'll see that you have an open zipper brush in your brushes panel. We're going to apply the open zipper now. So choose the pen tool in your toolbar. And we're going to create a path with 3 clicks that looks like this. Click once, and then straight down, click once. And then you can hover your mouse over to the side, hold down Control, and then click to end the path. Go to the selection tool and select this line, either by drawing a marquee or clicking on it. You're going to apply this open zipper brush by just clicking on the image of it in the brush panel. And now you have an open zipper. If you find that the extension part on the top isn't quite long enough for you, you can go back to the toolbar and you can add further anchor points. And then notice how it extends. Okay, so now we're going to build the other side of the zipper. For this, we are going to use the Reflect tool. So we need to choose our path, go to the Selection tool, make sure that your path is selected, and then you're going to double click on the Reflect tool. You're going to choose Vertical and Copy. And now you see a reflection of your open zipper. Using the arrow key on your keyboard, nudge the zipper over so it overlaps the first set of teeth, about like this. So that could be 1 to 2 clicks. And then we are going to nudge it up once. This gives you a closed zipper with a little bit open at the top. This is the point at which you would add a zipper pull. And so you're actually going to do this later in the exercise. What you might want to practice doing is creating different shapes of paths to determine what type of open zipper you might want to create. So for example, you could create one with more of a slant, like this. And then if I were to select it, apply the brush, and then reflect it, notice how the open nature of the zipper is more pronounced now. So instead of having only a little bit overlapping at the top, it's got a much wider V. So you'll definitely want to play around with that. Notice how these shapes here have a little bit of a weird aspect to them. You can either use the Direct Selection tool to reshape the individual pieces, or you can simply wait until you add a zipper pull, and then it will cover up those weird edges. But typically you'll get this type of edge when you have a wider V, so you may want to stick to having more of a closed open zipper like this one on the right. So make sure that you have drawn at least one open zipper like this. Now we are going to move to section 4B, creating a closed zipper. So I'm going to move some of my panels out of the way so I have workspace. With the selection tool active, I want you to select the little rectangle that originally made the open zipper and move it over to the side so you can work with it. And go to Edit, Copy, and then you're going to move over and down with this selection by holding down the Alt key and dragging the zipper over and down just a bit. So notice how I'm holding down the Alt key and I've used my mouse to click, hold, and drag. And we're going to align it about like this so that they're connected. So you can even move it down a little bit more so it's about halfway. Now we want to make this a closed zipper brush. So we're going to select the whole shape. And then we're going to choose in the brush panel, New Brush. It's going to be a pattern brush. And we're going to name this Closed Zipper. And then click OK. Now, a helpful hint in Illustrator is that all brushes are created from left to right. So it's really important that this rule be followed for the brush to be accurately applied. So now let's apply the zipper brush to the jacket. So let's choose our zoom tool, press Alt so that your magnifying glass turns to a minus sign, and zoom out so that you can see your jacket. Center the jacket on the screen and then choose the pen tool. Draw a line segment down the center of the jacket on the vertical rectangle where the zipper should be. So right here, where there's already a vertical line as a guide. So I'm going to click once, and then I'm going to stretch down to the end of this line and click again to form my path. Using the selection tool, I'm going to make sure that my new path is selected, and then I'm going to go to the brushes panel and click on my closed zipper brush. Now you will see that my closed zipper is in place. If you want to check the scale of what you're doing, you can zoom in and see what it looks like. In this case, we're only practicing because there's already a line there to guide you. So it's covered up a little bit by that guideline. But it's a good exercise to show you what a zipper should look like. And you can also play around with the scale. So if you choose the scale tool, double click, and you can change the size to, let's say, 120%. And notice how it then becomes bigger. So always use that as a guide, and you can shorten your path if needed if you want to scale it. The last section with regard to brushes is Brush Libraries, Section 5. Now you have the beginnings of a brush library, and it's important to know how to save them. So you're going to begin by removing any Illustrator brushes that you don't need. They already exist in Illustrator, and it would be redundant to save them. So click on the brush you wish to remove, and then click on the trash can icon in the bottom right corner of the brushes panel. So I'm going to start at the top and get rid of this charcoal feather one here, trash can. And you can remove strokes. Same with this one. And actually, I'm going to back up because I don't want this to affect my current zipper. So I am going to select away from that so that it's not affecting this. Then I'm going to go back to my brushes panel. We can again make that go away. This orange one can go away. And this mop brush can go away as well. This is a denim seam. You might want to keep that if it helps you, but just delete a couple for now. You can also delete the top row of calligraphy brushes if they are present. So you can click the same way, click, hold, drag to the trash can. These are all default settings. Now, this set of brushes you have created can be saved. The only brush that cannot be deleted is the basic brush and the basic calligraphy tool up here. So those two will always remain. The good news is that brushes save with the file you are working in. So all you need to do is save the file to save the brushes. So choose File, Save As. And it's a good idea to save all brushes in the same place so you know where to find them. So I'm going to create a folder titled Brushes. And then choose where you want this folder to live and create it. In the Save As window, I'm going to save it in this. And then I'm going to title these brushes Basic Set. So these are the start to your brushes. Then click Save. If you want to load these brushes for future work, click on the Brush Libraries icon. It's the one that looks like a stack of books down in the lower left corner. A new list of options will appear. Click Other Library down at the bottom and navigate to the folder where you saved your brushes. So I'm going to go to my brushes folder and then Basic Set. And I can load them by clicking Open. And then notice how they open in a Basic Set brush window for me. If multiple brushes or sets or windows are open, like you see here, you can add singular brushes to different sets by clicking and dragging into the intended brush set window. So if I wanted to have this brush that I didn't already have over here, I could just simply drag it and it would appear. Even though I do already have it, notice how I was able to click, hold, and drag to create a different set or to work with this current set. And so those are the basics of managing your brush library, which is creating and adding symbols. Okay, so symbols work roughly the same way as brushes, except these are just small images or objects that you place. So the idea behind building symbols is that you're going to create a library of things like different buttons, different pockets, cups, and so you're going to have a menu very similar to the brushes. In fact, it's under the same tab panel. And if you just click on it, for example, then you can have your symbol appear. So if I am on my board here, then I can just have the symbol appear anywhere I want it to. And then it's already in place. Flipping over to page 10, the idea for this is that you're going to start to build a symbol library. And in order to do that, we're going to work on Artboard 4, which is blank. So it's a good idea to zoom in just so that you have a nice big workspace. And then we're going to begin by creating a rivet. So select the ellipse tool. So it's going to be hidden under your rectangle. And this would be a good time to tear away your basic shapes tool for easy access. So I'm going to grab my ellipse. And now we're going to click in the blank white area to make our options window show up. We're going to make a circle that is 4 points in width. So remember to add the points measurement. And 4 points in height. And then click OK. You're going to see this teeny tiny circle appear right here. And we want to probably zoom in on that further before we do the stroke, just so that you can see what you're doing. Okay, so here's a good size to look at. Make sure that the stroke is set to 0.25. And now we're going to fill the circle with a gradient. So before we move on to the gradient area in the panel section, make sure that your circle is still selected. My gradient panel is already open here on the far right side of my screen, but if yours isn't, go up to Window and then Gradient. When this is open, I want you to click on the drop-down type area right here and choose Radial. So this means that it is going to be a gradient from the center outward. And then we're going to change the blend a bit because it's still kind of dark overall, and we want to add more white to the center. So you're going to use your gradient slider here, take this diamond, click and drag to determine how much white you want in the middle. So the more you move it towards the right, the more white you're going to see in the middle. And you can decide how much white you want, just as long as you have more white than it started with. Now we're going to duplicate what we just did, and we're going to make a smaller circle. So this can be done once with the scale tool. And our scale tool, if you were using the reshape tool, it's hidden under that. So double click on the scale tool and this menu will come up. In the uniform section, we want to type in 50% because we want the circle to be half as big as the one we already have. Then flip to page 11. Before you click OK and copy, I want you to make sure that the scale, strokes, and effects box is checked. So this is going to ensure that if you make a smaller shape, it is going to have a smaller stroke in proportion. So that's important. Now that we have that done, we're going to click copy because we want the new circle on top of the old one. So now you should have a shape that looks like this. Before we move on, let's change the stroke of this inner circle because it's looking really dark. So make sure that the inner circle is selected, that you can see that red line around it. And then I want you to change it to charcoal gray using the options toolbar at the top of the screen, or you could use the swatches panel. Okay. So you can choose which gray you like. Now we're going to make the rivet a symbol. But before we do that, let's think about what type of gradient we want to apply to this inner circle. Because right now it's still looking kind of two-dimensional. We want it to be more dimensional. So go back to your gradient panel, choose radial gradient, and then again adjust the level of white that you want in the center. So you should have something that looks about like this. Now we need to make this a symbol so that we can use it again on a garment. So use the selection tool, draw a marquee around it, the whole thing, and then go to your symbols panel. This is going to be very similar to the brush process. So we're going to choose the new symbol piece of paper, same symbol, different function. And then you're going to see this symbol options menu up here. We're going to name this rivet. And for the purposes of your work, you'll never need to work with this export type or symbol type, because this is more for if you are exporting it to like a movie clip or a Flash application for the computer. So it shouldn't be something that you need to worry about, at least for now. So then click OK. Now you'll see that there's a thumbnail image of your rivet shape in the symbols. So all I have to do is click drag, and I create a rivet symbol whenever I want it. I don't have to rebuild this ever again. So I want you to, you can undo this rivet that you just dragged for practice. I want you to move your rivet to the upper left corner of the artboard. And if it helps, you can zoom out. And then you get a sense of just how small the scale is in order for it to look proper on a garment as well. So as upper left as you can feasibly get. Okay, so now we're going to create an eyelet. So I want you to select your rivet and then choose Edit Copy, Edit Paste. So we're going to turn this rivet into an eyelet. But we need to change the way that this is linked as a symbol, because if we make changes to the shape, every shape thereafter of the rivet will look like an eyelet. So we need to break the link. So what we can do is select our shape. There's a button at the top of the screen here that says Break Link. Or you can right-click on the screen and select Break Link to Symbol. Either way does the same thing. Then flip over to page 12. So now that it's no longer a symbol, we can open Pathfinder. So go up to Window, and then Pathfinder. And you should see a menu pop up that looks like this. We want to punch out the hole from the center so that, sort of like an eyelet that you would see on your tennis shoes that the lace goes through. we want the middle to be hollow to mimic that shape. So we're going to choose under shape modes, the exclude option, which is the fourth one from the left. And as soon as you do that, the center will be punched out. Let's then restore the stroke back to black so that it's properly emphasized. So go ahead and select stroke to black for both circles, and then it will look like this. So you can select the entire shape and it doesn't matter as long as you have it selected so that the inner stroke goes back to black. Now let's make the eyelet a symbol. So we go back to our symbols menu, click the new symbol piece of paper, and we're going to name this eyelet. And then click OK. Questions? Everybody follow that? Do we need to see anything again? No? Okay. So then I want you to select your eyelet shape and move it over underneath your ribbon. Now we're going to create a two-hole button symbol. Question or help?
I think I figured it out.
Did you get it? Okay. So when it comes to buttons, one of the things that can be helpful is to have even a croquis open if you don't have an apparel flat done already, so that you can scale the button properly. You don't want the buttons to look terribly out of proportion on your flat. Unless it's meant to be quirky, like some type of Betsy Johnson creation, but you can go that way, but just so you know, proportion matters. So we are going to begin with the ellipse tool. So click once on the artboard after selecting that tool. And then I want you to change the width to 5 points and the height to 5 points. And then click OK. And then I want you to change the stroke weight to 0.25. And one thing I want you to take note of, so put a star by this for your own work. This is a good standard size in step 2 for a button. So 5 points by 5 points. Now use your zoom tool to zoom in on what you're doing because we have some detail to work on. We're going to make the holes inside the button. So we're going to go back to our ellipse tool. Click once on the blank area and bring up your ellipse window. Then we're going to change the width to very, very tiny. It's going to be 0.5 point. Whoops. And then 0.5 point for height. And then click OK. So make sure now that you go up and switch the fill to black and the stroke to none. We don't often change the stroke to none, but for this case, we are. Now you're going to make copies of this tiny circle. Okay. So we're going to choose, make sure that it's selected, And then you're going to choose Edit Copy, Edit Paste in Front. And use the arrow keys to move it over. Usually for a 2-hole button, 1 click is okay. 2 clicks might be better if you prefer it that way. It's kind of up to you. But generally, I would say 1 click is most common, like this. Now I want you to select both of them together, right-click, and choose Group. And then you're going to use the selection tool to align them in the button. So we're going to move them. We're going to move them over into the button, and we're going to select all. So all together. And if you still have your Pathfinder menu or panel open, you'll notice that there is an Align tab on that same panel window. If you don't have that open, either go to the right side of your screen or go to Window, Align. And now we're going to align horizontal center, and we're going to align vertical center. So now it's properly placed in the middle. And now you have a 2-hole button. So I want you now to make a symbol out of it. So we're going to go to New Symbol in your Symbols panel. We're going to name this 2-hole button and click OK.
Do we need to have the gradient on it or not, or does it matter?
Generally speaking, a gradient is best to have just for like a realistic look to a button, but it doesn't always matter. And so if you like the appearance of it, you could always create another symbol that has a gradient if you wanted. It's totally up to you. But for the purposes of this, as long as you have the shape and the holes, that's fine. And then as soon as you have your button, move it over to the side underneath the rest of your buttons. Or the rest of your shapes, I should say. Okay, we're going to do the same exact thing. So I want you to practice now. It's basically the same steps, creating a 4-hole button. So see if you can do this one. I'm going to make a copy of my 2-hole button to start with. So I've got my copy now, and I need to break the link. Remember, this is really important so that you don't mess up your symbols. So I'm going to go up to the top of the screen, and I'm going to press the Break Link button. Then I'm going to select the 2 buttonholes in the center, only the buttonholes. And what you may have to do this is select all of the button and choose right-click, ungroup. So if you're not finding that, based on how your computer is working, that the shapes are not allowing you to choose just the 2 buttonholes, then you can select the whole shape and right click and choose ungroup. And then we can group it back together. Now for this one, we're going to do edit copy to duplicate 2 more holes, and then edit paste in front. Now I'm going to use my down arrow key to move it. But notice that they're still a little bit wonky. We need to change that. So I am going to select all, and then I'm going to group them back together.
Did you start it out again?
It needs to, you need to command the I. It will be like
So when you finish doing all of the alignment and grouping of the button, you should have a shape that looks like this. So if you've gotten to the point where you have your 4-hole button, make a symbol out of it. And we're going to name this one 4-hole button. And then when you're done with that, move your 4-hole button shape below your 2-hole button shape along the left edge. Now we're going to finish up our buttons with section 6E, and we're going to be creating a fancy engraved button. Go ahead and zoom in on Artboard 4. So I'm going to draw a marquee with my zoom symbol or tool so that I can get in there. So this is what I want to create. This is my fancy engraved button. But how do we get there? I'm going to begin by going to my symbols panel. I'm going to drag a copy of the 4-hole button onto the screen. But in order to work with it and make changes, I actually need to break the link first. So I'm going to go up to the top of the screen here and click Break Link. Now this time, we are actually going to add a linear gradient. So we're going to select our button, go over to the gradient panel, and then under Type for the drop-down menu, we're going to choose Linear. And again, you can use this gradient slider diamond to select the amount of white you want to see in the button. Next, we're going to use the Scale tool to make a copy of the button at 70%. So I'm going to double click on the Scale tool over here on the left. And then under Uniform, I'm going to create a copy at 70%. And then make sure that Scale, Strokes, and Effects is checked and click Copy. Now you have another circle within your 4-hole button. Now, it doesn't look like anything too spectacular yet, but watch where the magic happens here. Double-click on the Reflect tool icon, and then you are going to set it to vertical. And then you're not going to copy it, you're just going to click OK. Notice now how, because I've reflected the gradient, it looks like it has a concave middle. Very shiny, very fancy. And in order to help this appearance, we are going to turn off the stroke. So I'm going to go up to the Options panel at the top of the screen and choose None. Then select, deselect, and now you have a fancy button. Make sure to make a symbol out of this now. So select the whole button, choose New Symbol, title it Fancy Button, and click OK. And now it's a saved symbol. Go ahead and then use the selection tool to move it underneath your 4-hole button shape on Artboard 4. And now we come to our very last section here. In terms of the pieces we need to create a zipper, which is the zipper pull. This is section 6F. So let's make a zipper pull to go with your zipper brush. It's made up of 3 pieces: the slide, the top part, the connector, the middle part, and the pull, the bottom part. It's easiest to make it at a larger size than you need it and then reduce it when you're done. That way you can pay attention to the detail as it's being created. So let's start with the slide part of the zipper. Choose the rounded rectangle tool. Click once on the blank white area of the artboard. A rounded rectangle options window will appear. Change the width to 16 point. Remember, the point piece is important. And the height to 16 point. We're going to choose a corner radius of 3 points. And then click OK. And I still have my gradient on from working with the other shapes. And so I am going to turn this gradient off. And turn my stroke back on. Now you're going to double click on the Rotate tool icon. So the Rotate tool is hidden underneath the Reflect tool. And you can tear this away if it helps you to work that way. I'll just move this up here. A Rotate Options window will appear as soon as you double click on the icon, like this. We're going to type in 45 degrees for the angle. Click OK. Now it's shaped like a diamond. Let's reset the bounding box for the next step. So with the diamond selected, and it should be if you see this red line here, choose Object up at the top of the screen, Transform, and then Reset Bounding Box. Next, we're going to work with the Direct Selection tool. So choose Direct Selection, the white arrow, and select just the bottom 2 anchor points at the of the diamond. So just the bottom 2. I'm going to select 1, hold down Shift, and select 2. And you'll notice that these 2 are the only ones selected because the rest are hollow white points. Using the arrow keys on your keyboard, nudge the anchor points down 4 or 5 clicks, depending on your preference. So I'm going to start 1, 2, 3, 4. Next, you want to choose the rectangle tool. So I'll just go ahead and tear this away since I'm working with a lot of shapes. Click once on the artboard, and then the rectangle options window will appear. Change the width to 12 points and the height to 39 points. And then click OK. Now let's edit this new rectangle. So choose the direct selection tool and select one of the bottom corners. I'm going to start with the one on the left here. Move it in 1 click toward the center. So in this case, using the right facing arrow. And notice how it goes in. Now select the other bottom corner, in my case, the right corner, and use the left facing arrow to do 1 click inward. Now the pole is still incomplete without a hole inside. So I'm actually going to move my panels just a little bit and scoot this over so that I have plenty of blank space to see it and work with. We're going to choose the rounded rectangle tool next and click once on the artboard, or twice, depending on what your computer responds to. Then you're going to change the width to 5 points, the height to 15 points, and the corner radius to 3 points. And then click OK and place this piece on top of the zipper pull. So I'm going to choose the selection tool and place it on top. The inner hole now needs to be aligned to the zipper pull. And so we're going to select both pieces. So I can draw a marquee around both using the selection tool. Then I'm going to open the Align panel. So mine's already open on the side, but remember, if you need it, Window, Align. With these 2 pieces selected, we're going to choose the horizontal Align center. And then it perfectly centers it in the middle. Now we want to open the Pathfinder panel to punch out and exclude the space inside the hole. So the Pathfinder tab is actually already open with the Align panel. So you can choose that there, or if you need to, go up to Window, Pathfinder. So with Pathfinder, we are going to choose the Exclude symbol. It's this 4th one from the left. And you can add a color to the zipper pull to differentiate the pieces now, if you would like. So for example, if I selected this and I wanted to add a fill, notice how the piece is punched out because the fill only applies to the zipper pull. So I'm going to undo that color swatch. Now we're going to choose the rounded rectangle tool again. Click once on the artboard and change the width to 3.5 points and the height to 12 points and the corner radius of 3 points, and then click OK. We now have all of the pieces we need, so we're going to assemble our zipper. Take the pull and move it on top of the slider. So I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so that we can see all of our pieces together. So I'm going to move my slide on top of here. And actually, I am going to move this piece. You can move your slide pole down if you need to, but I'm going to go ahead and leave mine here. And it should sit somewhere around halfway to 2/3 of the way on top of the slider. So I'll leave mine here. And then you're going to move the connector piece on top of that. I am going to arrange and bring to front this piece. And your zipper pull should cover the slider. If I add a fill, then we have it set up so that it's sitting on top of the slider. Now I'm going to choose my connector and add it on top here. And I am going to bring this to the front if it's not sitting on top, and I'm going to add a fill to make sure that everything is positioned properly. Now I want to select the whole group of shapes using the selection tool. So I draw a rectangle marquee around it, and I have my Align panel open. Choose the horizontal Align Center, which is this one here, so that they align properly together. Now right-click on the artboard with the shapes still selected and choose Group. The last step is to scale it down because remember that you created it on a much larger scale for ease. So select the zipper shape and choose the Scale tool. So we're going to go over here, double-click to open the menu. Scale it down in the Uniform section to 25%. That may seem small, but remember, zippers are a very small part of apparel. Make sure that Scale, Strokes, and Effects is checked and click OK. Now look at how the size has been transformed. You now have a complete zipper pull, so make a symbol out of it. Go to your symbol panel. I'm going to reopen mine. And then use your selection tool to select the shape. Then you're going to go down to the new symbol icon and name it Zipper Pull. You could name it something like Basic Zipper Pull or Zipper Pull 1, whatever works for you, but make sure it says Zipper Pull. And now go back and apply the zipper pull to the zippers you created on Artboard 3. So I am going to go over to this particular jacket on Artboard 3. I'm going to zoom in. And I've actually resized this or scaled it. And so I want to readjust what I've done here. Always select first. Okay, So notice then how it gets a little bit smaller. And if I need to, I can drag it up. Then I'm going to drag, click, hold, drag my zipper pull symbol, and I'm going to add it to the top here. So position it about like that. And if you want to see the whole thing to get it out of the way of that black area, you can pull it down just a little bit. Then scroll up to the top area of Artboard 3 where you were creating your other zippers. So the open zipper in this case. Find your open zipper and again, click, hold, drag to apply the zipper pull to this zipper. And you want to position it a little bit down. I'm going to zoom in so you can see what I'm doing a bit better. And try and center it as well as you can. Generally, you want it a little bit lower than the opening. And then if you want to, you can choose right-click, arrange, bring to front. And you can also choose a fill for this shape so that it lays on top as well. So here is your open zipper. And you're going to add the combination of zipper and zipper pull as a symbol. So let me go back and capture what we were just doing with this open zipper. And I'm going to use my selection tool to reposition my zipper here. Now you can add all of this together. Pressing down the Shift key and selecting all of the shapes associated. And then choose New Symbol, Zipper and Pull, you can title it, and click OK. So then you can click, hold, and drag the entire zipper. Now, you will notice that this zipper pull is not showing up on top of the zipper. So this is likely something to do with the fill. So you may need to play around with the fill to see what works in order to get it to properly lay on top of it. Then go back to Artboard 4, zoom in on the area you were working on, use the selection tool, and move your zipper pull underneath your fancy button. Now we've come to the last section of the exercise, which is 6G, creating a buttonhole symbol. So go to the symbol panel and click and drag a button onto the artboard. It could be any button you want. So I'll choose the 4-hole button. And I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more so I can see what I'm doing. Now the buttonhole needs to be the right size, which is why you will start with the button. So the buttonhole is made using the rectangle tool. So choose that tool and draw a rectangle that is a bit longer than the button. So I'm going to start at the center, press Alt, so that I draw a perfect rectangle from the center out, and then stretch about like so. And you should have something that looks about like this. Go over to the stroke panel, and you're going to change the weight to 0.25, and make sure that you have round caps and round corners. Next, we're going to go up to Effect at the top of the screen, and then choose Distort and Transform, and then Zigzag. A menu will pop up, and click to check the preview box. Notice when you click that box, it looks like a mess. But don't worry, you're going to make adjustments. So the first thing you need to do is change the size to relative. And we're going to change the percentage to 4% to make it look much more accurate. The next thing you need to do is add ridges per segment. So slide it to a size you are happy with, but make sure to stop on an odd number so that the corners are consistent. 25 to 35 is usually a good range. So I'll go with 35. And if you want to go more than that, you certainly can. But that's usually a good range. And then click OK. Now open the Symbols panel. Click the new symbol icon, and name this Buttonhole. Click OK. Right-click with the buttonhole selected and choose Arrange, Send to Back. Then your buttonhole will be appropriately placed behind the button. You can add this as a symbol as well to save time. So if I want to choose all of this, I can choose the selection tool, select the whole thing, new symbol, buttonhole with 4-hole button, and click OK. And now it is its own symbol. Go ahead and use the selection tool to move this shape over underneath the zipper pull. Now let's make another style of buttonhole. This one's called the keyhole buttonhole. And again, having a button in place will help you. So I'm going to go ahead and drag a button out so that I can measure properly. So I'm going to start out here. I'm going to drag, but don't let go of your mouse. While holding, drag the mouse straight down like this. And then click back as soon as you've let go, like this, where you started. So you should have a shape that looks like this. So let's now go back and apply the zigzag effect. Go to Effect, Distort and Transform, Zigzag. Do the same thing again. Choose 4% for size and make it relative. And then ridges per segment, just try and choose the same number you had chosen before. And now you have zigzags. But this is a really big buttonhole, and so let's use our selection tool to squish it down a bit so it looks more realistic. That's more appropriate for a buttonhole. Then use the button that you dragged out onto the screen and move it on top of the buttonhole. You can choose Arrange, right-click Arrange, Bring to Front to bring the button forward, and then it's sitting on top of the buttonhole. So now you can select the buttonhole, add it as a symbol, And then use your selection tool to select both and add those as a symbol. Then move this shape underneath the other buttonhole you just made on the left side of the artboard. Now you're done, so you can save the file as 12 Final and submit to the completed exercise 12 submission portal in Canvas.